the Q&A feature. Two of our professional staff within the First Year Center are helping to field these questions. We will answer those that we find applicable to the audience as a whole on this webinar, and then any nuanced or more personal questions we will respond to via email later this week. So let's go ahead and make sure you know how to use that Q&A feature. To use the Q&A feature, why don't you please share where you're watching from, and we'll name a few of those places on air. And so while you all are telling us where you're tuning in from, we want to let you know that we're also going to show a PowerPoint created by our Campus Life colleagues during tonight's webinar. However, if you prefer to download the PowerPoint as opposed to kind of looking at the tiny version on your laptop screen, you can follow the link just shared in the chat. And as a note, in the chat feature tonight, we'll be sharing several links and email addresses that are relevant to the topics we're discussing, so you have those resources available. And then third, this webinar is being recorded live. You probably saw a little button pop up that says accept that this is being recorded. And so we are recording the webinar. We're going to upload it to families.worcester.edu later this week, and that will have the transcript as well as the video recording. And so lastly, in a moment, we will hear directly from Beth and Danny about the services offered by Campus Life. If something Beth or Danny say sparks a question, don't forget to put that question in the Q&A feature. So before we hear from Beth and Danny, let's hear about some of the places that you all are joining us from this evening. So we have families tuning in from Lafayette, Louisiana, Lewisburg, West Virginia, Seattle, Washington, to kind of span the entire United States there, which is really exciting. And so now, since I know who you really want to hear from are my colleagues in Campus Life, I'm going to turn this over to Beth and Danny.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you for joining Campus Life as we explore the other classroom, building community in a virtual reality. As Catherine mentioned, my name is Beth Doores. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as the Associate Director for Campus Life, focused on advising, and that really looks at specifically advising our governing body, Student Union, and also working with our sorority and fraternity life community. As Catherine mentioned about her family, I have a exciting 5-year-old and an enthusiastic 2-year-old and a dog. So they all are equally enjoying each other and family. So if you hear them, my apologies in advance. In addition, joining us to the conversation, as Catherine mentioned, is my colleague, Danny Kim, who will introduce himself.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Danny Kim, and I use he, him, his pronouns, and I serve as the Associate Director for Campus Life, focusing on programming. And what that means is I work on putting together some fun and cool events that students can be part of, whether it's just for fun or to build relationships with each other, or whether it's for growth and leadership development. I also oversee the management of student groups on campus and the marketing of our department and other duties that's assigned. And so that is who I am. And I have a 13-week-old puppy in the background as well. So we all got some noise going on.
Absolutely. You know, WashU always talks about name and story. We're definitely getting a lot of our name and our story in real time. So thank you so much, Danny, and thank you so much, Catherine, and the First Year Center for having us talk a little bit more about our experience as we engage with your students. Over the course of our time, we've divided the formal part of the conversation into 3 parts: identifying campus life, community, and virtual connections. As Catherine mentioned, please feel free to use the chat feature when asking questions. We hopefully will be able to respond to the questions that we received prior to today during the conversation, but certainly, as Catherine mentioned, we'll be answering questions after this. So to get us started, Danny Kim is going to share a little bit more about campus life and how we show up to engage with your student.
I mean, I just really want to introduce Campus Life real quick, and we'll talk about the vision and the mission and who we are. So for vision, I mean, we're saying, okay, we're helping students become better people, building better communities. And the bottom line I won't read through the mission statement for us, but the bottom line of what we do is we help our students find their communities, help them build their own communities, and hopefully help them grow and become better citizens through those communities. And so we'll talk through today and during our webinar on how we do that more specifically. So Beth will talk more in detail about the communities portion.
Thank you, Danny. And as we mentioned, we're about programs, advising, and resources. And how we build community is so unique and it engages your students in that process. So here at WashU, our community has over 400 registered student groups under 14 different categories. On this slide, we've shared the top 5 categories with respect to number of groups. So within our academic category, just as a frame of reference, we have around 121 student groups, with our 5th most popular group being recreation and entertainment, both having 81 student groups. All of our student groups can be found in our Washington University Group Organizer, or as we like to call it, WUGO, so some WUGO fun here. And so Danny's going to talk a little bit more how you can leverage our online platform, WUGO, to engage with your students, whether it's student groups or the events that we are hosting, whether it's within campus life or our student groups. To give you some definition around some of our categories, diversity and inclusion are groups that celebrate, educate, and communicate the nature of specific shared identities and experience, such as race, class, gender, sexual orientation, ability, veteran status, and ethnicity. When we refer to cultural groups, those are groups that with primary focus on specific culture, nationality, or ethnicity in order to provide education, advocacy, support, and camaraderie. And when we think about our recreational groups, we are looking at those that are focused on engaging in the recreational and leisure activities. This may be competitive, but it may not be. So our groups, we have a variety of different experiences. And when we are looking at them, we want to share with you some overarching themes of our groups. When we are looking at this slide and specifically looking at the formal selection process, this means that the group may have a tryout or audition or eligibility requirements. So for example, our a cappella groups have an audition to see students' skill sets, while our academic groups, such as our English honorary organization, Sigma Tau Delta, might have an eligibility on GPA. So that's what we mean by a formal selection process. I want to draw your attention to our group advisor section at 73%. And of our student groups, so that 400 plus student groups, 73% have a faculty or staff advisor supporting them in their process, their development, their leadership, their engagement. Of those 73%, 42% actually are required because of their job duties. So they're really experts in advising. And I think that that is so important in the time that we are in this virtual setting, but also in person, that we do have that service available. In addition, student groups and individual students have access to our group Pathways to Success, which is our co-curricular advisory experience. We call it GPS advisors. And so as our students have academic advisors, our students also have this co-curricular advising model. So whether it's an individual wanting to get engaged or a group that's needing help on group dynamics, they can reach out to one of our GPS advisors, which is a professional campus life staff member, to engage them in dialogue and conversation. And so that's a really great outlet as parents, as partners. If your students are trying to navigate our community, trying to get involved, they can reach out to Danny or myself. Even though Danny is a lot more hip on the virtual programming side, certainly we have other folks that are as equally hip, if hip is an actual word that we're using today, but we can certainly get them plugged in. Another opportunity that we have to engage your student with is sorority and fraternity life. So our community has 29 chapters. Our chapters are divided into 3 different councils. We have United Greek Council that has more of our historically African-American fraternities and sororities, and the Latinx organization. We also have our Women's Panhellenic, which is our traditional framework of sororities that are under a national organization called National Panhellenic Council. And then we also have our Interfraternity Council, which has an umbrella group of the National Interfraternity Council. And we are all going through recruitment in real time, or intake. So we currently have that happening right now, present day, with the new member process starting in March. I can share with you, we have over 300 students that are engaging in this process and have an interest. We do have an eligibility requirement of having at least 12 units of classes under their academic experience, along with at least a 2.5 GPA. And certainly we are having those conversations with your students right now. And below, as you can see, there's a lot of different ways to show up in sorority sorority and fraternity life and engage within this experience. And I will like to make mention, as we've had a question about where we are in the climate of our sorority and fraternity life community. For context, some of our families know about this, but wanted to give you a broader context. Back in July, there was an Abolish Greek Life movement that occurred. And as a result of the conversations that have happened externally and internally, our sorority and fraternity life community is going through a reform efforts to really engage in how we show up and support our students within the sorority and fraternity life community. We also found that it was essential for us to open that scope up of harm that has happened in our co-curricular community to all of those student groups that we mentioned. And so we have, over the last 9 weeks, put a board together called the Co-Curricular Advisory Board that is made up of student leaders to look at what are some of the issues globally within our co-curricular community and start to address that. We are going to share with you a link called Campus Connection that has more information about the reform efforts that our student groups are engaging with, that our sororities and fraternities are engaging with. So you'll start to see sorority and fraternity life look a little bit different this year as to previous years. For example, there's no registration fee. All of the recruitment efforts are going to be virtual. And so there's a lot of different measures that our sorority and fraternity life community has taken to have a safe experience and to also engage our students in that process for those that are interested in participating in it. So as we talk about sorority and fraternity life, we have to think about what is and what is not sorority and fraternity life. And so I will tell you that I was affiliated with my sorority back in the early 2000s. My husband is also affiliated, but he was started his process in the early 90s. And so what we experienced in the early 2000s and the early 90s may look a little bit different, right? Our college campus, our sororities and fraternities, that community, again, changed and grew, which we really want that to happen. That equally is happening within our community today. So for those parents and families that are affiliated, I welcome you into this conversation. And this is really to address that there is, our students are engaged in their academic excellence and service to our community. They want to be leaders. And then it also says what we aren't. And we want to be true to the word of that lifelong commitment that our members are interested in participating in. Your students might be interested in taking this as a community outlet. So speaking of leadership, Danny's going to talk a little bit more about how we engage not only within the sorority and fraternity life as it relates to leadership, but all of our student groups and individual students that are wanting to show up and experience leadership.
Thanks, Beth. So as Beth was saying, there are so many different really cool ways for students to get involved on campus, whether it's through student groups or whether it's through fraternity sorority life. But once they're in, and also if they're not in, we still have other ways to help students grow in their leadership. And so I'll talk about 3 different ways that we're currently offering ways for students to grow. Obviously, through the pandemic, we've had to shift and evolve with the times. And even with all that, I think we're really still proud of all the ways that we're still able to serve our students. And so first and foremost, through programs, in other words, through events, right? There are certain events that we have virtually, most of these. So first one is Emerging Leaders. That one is particularly targeted for first-year students or for budding leaders who are wanting to learn more about various different leadership opportunities on campus. And so Emerging Leaders is a great program if you have a first-year student. We also have something called Socially Just Leadership Institute, or SJLI. And what that is, it's still a leadership program, but it's geared specifically towards social justice issues. And so how do we approach this world where there's so many racial tensions happening, where there's so many inequities happening throughout the world? And how can we approach, how are we equipped with the knowledge and the skills to be able to be effective in this world, right? And so that is another program. And then we have something called Student Group Leadership Training. And as you learned from Beth, we have about 450 student groups on campus. And that means we have a lot of access to various students who are named as officers to that student group. And we meet with them, or we engage with them once a semester, and we give them all the tools that they need in order to have an engaging student group experience. But on top of that as well, we also give them various leadership tools that they need. And if you look here, we have something called GPS training, or Group Pathway to Success. And here are some examples of topics that we cover when we do some leadership trainings with them. So we talk about managing group conflict. We talk about who are you? Like, I mean, when we're talking about leadership, like that is one of the core things you gotta understand, right? Like understanding who you are. And then as part of that, we also help them understand their values and their strengths. And there's a myriad of other topics, but they wouldn't fit into the PowerPoint slide. And so just wanted to give you a glimpse into the types of things that we talk about. In addition to events and also various types of trainings that we do, we also have various roles and leadership roles that students can be part of. This includes the lead project, and we're actually recruiting right now for the lead project for the next upcoming year. So if any of your students are interested in joining, I'm gonna do a very soft recruitment call here. But anyway, what it is it's a group of students who either put on various programs or events on campus that help students become better leaders, or they do like peer mentorship, and they help students who might not know how to get involved on campus to help them get involved into various student groups. And they also do various leadership trainings for student group leaders. So really great opportunity. All kinds of students are in that program, and I hope you'll also encourage your student to get involved in that. We also, a very huge component of leadership too, that is affiliated deeply with us, is Student Union. And Student Union, for those of you who are not familiar with, is our form of student government association. And so there's Senate, there's Treasury, there's the Executive Board. There are so many different opportunities for students to be able to engage with their peers, engage with administrators and faculty, engage with their peers all around. And so it's a great way for them to learn a lot of leadership skills there. And they also have access to amazing advisors like Beth and other campus life advisors who will be able to spend time with them to be able to help them grow and develop.
And I would add to that, and thank you, Danny, for that shout out. I appreciate it. You know, as you're partnering with your student, one of the opportunities we have, so if your student is saying, I'm in my residence hall, there's really nothing to do, you can actually say, yes, there is the governing work. It's, as Danny mentioned, 17 different entities, over 250 membership representation of students. And so our election process is actually going to be starting here in February. So as Danny mentioned, there is a way to get engaged and to get engaged early on. And so your students can be on the lookout for that, whether they're wanting to think about sustainability efforts, if they're looking at it from mental health. There are a variety of different entities that our student body, who is very active, very, very active, can get your students plugged in, whether that's during the academic year or during the summer and winter breaks.
Mm-hmm. We're going to shift our conversation to virtual connections, and we all know the pandemic has been hard on everyone. And in regards to students, connecting with each other has been a really tough thing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how students can connect virtually during this time. One of the biggest ways that we talked about, that Beth started talking about, is called WUGO, and that's the Washington University Group Organizer. And a very simple way to think of it is thinking of it as a directory of all the events that are happening on campus that a student might be interested in, and a directory of all the student groups that they also can be part of as well. And so in the next slide, we'll be able to see the various events that they can be part of. And so in this slide, you'll see that the events tab is highlighted, right? So as a parent, you also could come into wugo.wusl.edu, and you could also start perusing some of the different events that are available to your student and other student organizations or student groups, as we call them here, that your student can be part of. There are some, students do have to log in to be able to see certain specific events events that are tailored to them. So you might not be able to get access to all of them as a parent, but you'll still be able to get an idea of some of the things that are happening on campus. We also have specific events happening on campus that we put on ourselves. One of the funnest things that students could be part of is called Paradise. This is something that last semester we put on probably once a week at the beginning. And then I think starting November or October, we started making it once a month. And pretty much it's a Friday night event where students can come together, and first and foremost, it's so that students are not doing some weird things during Friday night, but that they're actually coming with us and they're being safe and they're able to have a good time with us. And so it includes different interest groups that they can be part of. So they could, if they like Dungeons and Dragons or gaming or things like that, they can join those sessions. Or if they're interested in meeting people one-on-one, we also have a session where students can be randomly selected to meet various people, to be paired, to talk with them for like 1 minute. And if they like each other, then they can move on to develop a deeper relationship. But we've gotten so many great reviews and feedback from students. We get approximately 100 to 200 students coming to Paradise Friday nights when it happens. And the next Paradise is actually this Friday as well. And so if you have a student who's like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do this Friday night, well, tell them to come to Paradise. There are other ways that we try to engage our students, like Care Bear. I know a lot of our students are feeling isolated and like, they're not really hearing from a lot of people, but Care Bear is kind of like our play on Candygram. And so we're asking students to write kind notes to each other to remind each other that they matter and that they belong here. And so these notes that they can write to each other are distributed throughout campus for students to be able to write to each other. We have esports tournaments, we have Capture the Flag, and that's a student group event that will be performed in a safe way. But there are many different ways that we can engage our students. And so we can talk more about more examples, but just wanted to highlight some of those there. And we want to talk next about parents as partners.
So we gave you so much information about our virtual community, how our students are engaging in real time. And so here's a couple of ways that we encourage you to have some dialogue with your students as they are navigating this very unique year. One of the things that we mentioned was WUGO, that Washington University group organizer, has both events and organizations on it. In addition, academics is so important into that experience, and not all of our students are wanting to engage in their academic study in their residence hall room. That is why we offer study cubbies. And so our students can engage and reserve a space through Campus Life. And the spaces of our study cubbies range from very quiet to a little bit more interactive if there's Zoom classes that are happening, that they would be able to engage in that space. And so we want to tell you that that is another opportunity in terms of space and engaging in physical space that our students can participate in. We talked a lot about sororities and fraternities, as well as the 400 plus student groups that we have. If your student has missed activities fair that happened a week ago, do not worry. We do have ways to plug in and engage them. Our students are engaging and being creative. For example, our women's ultimate frisbee is doing practices virtually with a coach. So there's ways that we have, and our student groups are interested in doing that. We also encourage them to talk with our GPS advisor to get involved. We are experts within our field, and we want our students to find their name and story and their community through Campus Life and the support services that Danny has mentioned, and myself. And so there's a broad number of our partners within Campus Life that are newly coming into our campus community and a little bit more seasoned like myself. So there is definitely a variety of staff that they can enjoy and engage with. And then Danny's just going to share with you some ways that you can get plugged in on a weekly basis so that you know exactly what's happening. If your student is saying, I'm bored and there's nothing to do, you are able to engage with them.
Yeah, we send out this, we put a lot of time together, putting together ways that students can hear from us and they can hear about all the different opportunities. The newsletter is actually available for you as parents also to join and to hear from the different ways that we're hoping to engage our students. And so the link is there in this slide where you'll be able to hopefully join us and you can opt into a newsletter. And there's a QR code there if that's more appropriate for you. But that newsletter includes a weekly, on Mondays, we send out, we're actually just sent out the weekly newsletter, and that includes information that's available to all students. And then there are also segments that are categorized as for student group leaders, and then also for the fraternity and sorority life students who might be more relevant to them. And so we highly encourage you to join that. We also have social media pages where we're constantly putting up different ways that people can engage. And so the handles are there for you to join. But I think the most important way that you as a parent can partner with us is that you're constantly encouraging them to get connected with us. I think for Beth and I think, I've interacted with a lot of parents, and I think one of the biggest things that I hear from parents is hearing from us that we care about them. And we really did join this field because we care about students and we care about their safety and their development and their growth. And so if you ever hear from a student that they don't feel connected or they're having trouble getting involved, please have them reach out to us through these email addresses down here. We really love what we do. We really love our students, and we would love to develop those relationships with them. And so we encourage you to do that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth and Danny, for sharing that information. As both of you know, for months, we have been talking about virtual opportunities, and you shared some just now as well. If the public health situation changes, do we foresee that either our student groups or campus life as a department would be hosting any in-person opportunities later in the semester?
Look, if the public health guidelines change and we're allowed to do in-person things, trust me, folks, I have been clamoring for as many ways that we can continue to help our students get more engaged. And I know it's tough, the Zoom fatigue. I know it's tough with doing virtual things. And so we're doing our best to engage our students virtually. But if we go in person, I'm not complaining. I'm gonna be very happy to be able to find ways to put on a lot of events that we can make up for the year that we've been virtually, yeah. It's been a full year almost now.
And, I would say in addition to that, I think we all have enthusiasm to be in person, but we really want to be safe. And so the university has certain alert levels that we are able to engage with. We look at St. Louis County, St. Louis, Missouri. We're really staying in tune to make sure that all of our experiences are safe, whether that is in person or even virtual. And so as our guidelines, and you can certainly look at that at the covid19.ustil.edu, it does have programming guidelines and expectations. So if there is a need to engage in person and they fall within that restrictive process of less than 10 and it is vital to that experience, they are able to have an in-person experience in person and in a room. There's other guidelines that are external to that in the public space. And so we do take safety important. We do think through, currently we are at an orange, which does not allow for much person interaction, unfortunately. We are being creative with that. But we do take safety measures in terms of if there's an in-person event, in terms of requiring masks and the guidelines that are associated with that, and having time to clean the space after the conclusion of it. There are a few cases where there is in-person, but we work with the student group on that experience as well.
And I will just add for the families on this call, you all were forwarded an email late Friday afternoon that Rob Wild, our interim vice chancellor for student affairs, sent to all of our students, our undergraduate and our graduate students. Unfortunately, there was an incident where a group of 15 individuals had a party, and 10 of them have since tested positive for COVID. And actually it was 10 as of Friday. I actually think that number's gone up a little bit. And so I will say 99.9% of our students are following all the same public health guidelines that you are at home and doing the very best that they can to make sure that they stay safe, that their friends, classmates, and the campus stays safe as well. But it really is that party, I think, takes just a few people to really want to see each other, because we are all really struggling, I think, and it exploded pretty quickly. And so the university is hopeful that if our numbers stay low, and the city and counties where we are located, because WashU is in this weird, we are located in 3 different municipalities in 2 different counties. And if those 3 different municipalities in 2 different counties adjust their public health measures, we will be really excited to offer more in-person opportunities for our students. So we know that that is not the answer anyone really wants to hear, but we are doing our very best to keep our students safe, and they're doing the best to keep themselves and their classmates safe as well. So Beth, this next question is specifically for you. You spoke about fraternity and sorority life, but what really is it going to feel like to go through virtual recruitment, right? Like, I am a member of a women's organization, and there used to be 500 of us shoved in a room together. There was a lot of cheering. People were shaking hands. There were hugs. None of those things are happening. I can't imagine being in a room with 500 people and hugging them right now. Like, I'm probably getting red up my neck thinking about it. So what is it really going to feel like to participate in recruitment this year?
And I am right there with you. I was looking at a movie that from eons ago, and I'm like, they're touching each other, they're giving hugs. This is so foreign to me. So I really appreciate the statement and the sentiment about our safety and what we're thinking about. Being affiliated for over 20 years now, I've seen a lot of women and men participate in recruitment and engage in community, and every chapter always looks different, right? And it's because of their values. It's because of what they're doing in terms of service. It's how they're showing up. And some of our chapters have lived in the virtual world. As Danny mentioned, our folks that are interested in Dungeons and Dragons, for example, are living in a community system that is more electronic. And so, one of the things I can speak to is that our students have gravitated to technology, and so our sorority and fraternity life has built community prior to COVID happening in the virtual world. How does that show up? How does that engage? It's very new, and we're creating innovative approaches in terms of our interest parties so that our women and our men are able to showcase how they have those experiences. Certainly, we would ideally like to be in person, but again, it's about the energy that we spend. So it's similar to as your student is talking to you as a family member, you are able to translate that within the community. We can certainly use things like our online platforms, our GroupMe, our social media, but we are evolving and we're evolving as a community. And I'm really excited to see our students participate this year in sorority and fraternity life, in addition to how they've elevated community and really showed up for the person, and really scaled down some of the frills that we might have seen in prior years to really look at the person and that name and that story. So I actually think it's going to be a really good time for our students to engage and really show their personality and to that lifetime commitment. Now, I can imagine in the fall semester, when hopefully we're able to be in person, that is going to be a lot of hugging and a lot of excitement. So, but I'm looking forward to what they show our new members.
Thanks, Beth. One more question for you. This has to be from a returning parent because they asked a really specific question. So first I'm going to ask you to explain what I ask and then to answer the question. How are funds from WILD being redirected to benefit students since we're going to go 3 semesters without a WILD tradition? So can you explain what WILD is, and then how the activities fee has been adjusted, given that some of these large scale traditions that can be high cost, high impact aren't able to happen in a COVID environment?
Absolutely. So our student union, which is our governing body that Danny mentioned, there is a section of that, or an entity called Treasury, that is allocated the student activities fee, which is originally, or before pandemic, it was 1% of the total cost of tuition. And then the distribution of that allocation for student groups, for resources, for space. A whole host of services to engage with students is then allocated with our, guided by our advisor, who's our business manager, who works with the allocation process. When we're referring to a large tradition through our social programming board, WILD is an acronym called Walk In, Lay Down. It has evolved since the 70s in terms of the iteration of where we're at today to a three nationally affiliated artists that perform as an outdoor concert, and around 3,000 students actually participate in that. And so that's what we're referring to as that. What is unique and what we're sensitive to, and what I'm really appreciative of our students' voices, is that we looked at what the need was. And our student union said, look, we do not need 1% of the activities fee while we're in a pandemic. And so that scaled down to $50 for the last couple of semesters, because we were sensitive to what resources we had and could provide, as well as how our students were engaging that. So the allocation of funds actually was redistributed back to the families and to the students, because we did not ask for that 1%. We asked for $50 to cover some of the overhead costs of spaces, the virtual programming that our students are doing, and some of the creative solutions that our students are engaging with. We hope to see some of our traditions, such as some of our cultural-based performances that we see in Edison Theater, some of the social programming board efforts, and some of the other great programs come back, as we're anticipating that tuition and the student activities fee to come back to a 1% upcoming in this fall semester. So, I would say be on the lookout for some traditional programs that we'll be hosting in the spring semester or the fall semester.
So families, if you look at your students' account, their billing statement, you will see the charge for the 1%, and then you will see a credit for, I cannot do math in my head right now, but a credit to get it to where it was only $50 at the end.
Like $200. I think it's originally $250 per semester, and so we gave you back $200.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. But so you'll see it as a charge and then a credit, because, and the same for the health and wellness fee, it was a charge and then the credit, because many of you on this call who are CPAs can explain better why we have to do it that way, but I know it's for record keeping and the government. So Danny, some questions for you. You talked a lot about virtual programming that we're offering. So we have fully remote students who are not in St. Louis this semester. They are across the United States and around the world, honestly. So how can our fully remote students make connections, develop friendships, engage in these opportunities when they're not here and maybe the time zones are a little wonky?
Honestly, that's tough for sure for fully remote students, but there are still opportunities. And I definitely want to highlight those opportunities for students to be able to make friends. I host Paradise on Friday nights, and really, I know that I'm talking about this quite a bit, but it's such a fun time. It's really laid back and chill time where students can get to know each other and get to know me. And there's a segment specifically meant for students to be able to get to know each other. And so we really, that was one of our primary purposes of bringing this into existence this year, because it was not a thing prior to pandemic. Paradise for sure. I would highly encourage students to get involved in student groups right now. That is one of the best ways that students can find their communities. There are so many student groups on campus with so many different interests that students have created. And you know what? If you can't find something that is your cup of tea, then students can create their own student group and meet new friends through that way as well. And so I would highly encourage them to become part of a student group. I would also say, I think that, well, let me just stop there. Oh, Beth, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I would say I also, just for context, I serve as an academic advisor to students all across our world. So I can appreciate that time zone question. The other opportunity that we have is the student union. It has a mentor-mentee program that they have set up. Over 400 students have started to participate in that. So I think that there's some individual attention that our students can engage with that can be paired with a student that is in that particular country or in that particular time zone. So then that way they're able to engage in an experience working with our students that are identified as juniors or seniors. Some sophomores will also participate in this program. So that's another way.
I also know that various academic programs throughout the different schools have also this mentorship program where they are pairing up actually a student to another like administrator or faculty. So if they're interested in that kind of relationship, I highly encourage them to reach out to their schools and see if they have that type of program as well.
Danny, I think you might be speaking to the peer advisor programs that are in Sandbox and in Olin.
Mm-hmm.
Available to first year students specifically, and they actually should already have their peer advisor.
Okay.
Beth, another question for you. This first year for our first year students has been a little challenging, right? It's not the first year any of us would hope for a college student. What traditions and experiences are we going to be offering to our class of 2024 students?
Well, I think that there are some traditions that are happening that we are in the plans for. More specifically, we're in the plans of making a sophomore welcome as we begin the fall 2021 semester. And so again, not what we were thinking of, but we are certainly thinking about how we can create some traditions beyond their first year experience. So we really want to celebrate the hardworking and the resiliency of this class. And all of the students who have experienced this unusual, unprecedented time in their WashU journey. We're also going to be continuing with a hybrid version of a first year finale where students can stop by the first year center later this semester and pick up some really great goodies specifically for them. So whereas it's unusual time, we're also creating some traditions in this unusual time to create community.
We're also really excited because there's another project that we're currently working on. It's open to everybody, but I think first year students will take most advantage of this. If anyone have taken kind of like those BuzzFeed quizzes, like, oh, which Disney character are you or whatever, we're developing something similar to that where it's like, which student group are you? And it's our way to kind of address one of the major questions that we've been receiving. I mean, a lot of the conversations that I have with our students are, I don't know which student group to get involved with. And so with that tool of a quiz, we're hoping to be able to start the conversation with them and say, hey, based on what you filled out in this fun little quiz, we're gonna say these top 3 organizations are for you. And we're gonna have a follow-up conversation with you to see what did you think of them. But these are experiences that we're hoping to give to our first year students to really help them connect as well.
Annie, a question for you. Can you speak to student groups that offer opportunities for students to give back to the St. Louis community?
Yeah, we have a lot of service groups on campus, actually. I actually serve as, I know Beth alluded to this, but I serve as a GPS advisor to them. So what that means is I have about 50 service groups that I advise in some capacity. And so I know I am always amazed at the resilience of our students to continue to do it, even though they find so many challenges and barriers of things that they want to do. But all of these groups are finding ways that they can continue to give back to St. Louis community, whether it's through writing letters to elders or to people in nursing homes or in hospitals, whether it's through tutoring programs that they're doing in the local neighborhood. I think that the options are limited, frankly, but there are still opportunities for them to serve. And so if you go to wugo.wusol.edu, you'll actually be able to look at, if you click on the organizations tab, there's a category called service. And if you click on that and you click search, it will come up with all of the service groups that exist on campus, and you'll be able to encourage your student to find ways to give back.
I would say in addition to that, one of the unique things that we have here at WashU is that we have a YMCA here on campus. We call it Campus Y. And so what a great opportunity our students have to meet and engage with experts in a nonprofit space, give back to the St. Louis community. Jessica Egan is the executive director for Campus Y and has been really navigating the virtual spaces to give back to our community in a way that I highly encourage students to look at all of the variety of different nonprofit organizations they give to, how they engage students, and their students are phenomenal at getting our students in the right place and the right service. And so most of them, all of our experiences are going to be virtual at this point, but once we open it up here in the upcoming year, you're going to see a lot of other opportunities to engage our St. Louis community.
That actually reminded me, Beth, I actually also meet in addition with campus-wide with Gephardt Institute. And Gephardt is the organization on campus, it's a professional organization that serves the interest of the civic engagement of our students and also of the community. And so the three, I guess, trifecta of us together work together to really help students get into a service mindset.
Thank you. Beth, given that all of our activities are kind of different than they would normally be, has the university seen an increase in use of alcohol by students, either within a student group or in their rooms, just with a few friends? What does that look like on our campus? Because we do know that alcohol and other drug use amongst college students is higher than the general population.
Yeah, I think that's such an important question. So thank you, Catherine, for asking me that. When we look at the first 2 weeks of our school and our experience, our alcohol cases were not higher than normal. And good news, they were less than even as of spring semester. We anticipate less of those cases that are happening. I can tell you right now, my lovely duty phone that I have for our student groups that are engaging in activities, we have seen a significant less alcohol usage and less transport. So, I think it's something that we are educating our students on and making safe decisions and what those choices are looking at. But I can say great news, we're seeing less of those cases in front of us from an individual and a group.
Thank you. Danny, we've been talking about involvement, mostly thinking about student groups, leadership, those kind of opportunities, but a lot of students are really interested in student employment. Are there student employment opportunities on campus still available? And could you speak to how someone might find those?
Yeah, I mean, from the campus life perspective of things, we totally have a few student employment opportunities. We have something called DUXA. DUXAs are students who are employed by the Danforth University Center, the DUC. And so they are going to be they're going to be serving at different welcome tables and doing various things throughout the DUC. We also have event assistants, and we also have something called SUPR, which they do like photography, videography, and graphic design, in addition to our own in-house marketing department that we hire students for. Obviously, a lot of these things students can't do, we're not hiring for right now because we're pretty much closed down when it comes to a lot of the services that these students can offer. But we're actually hiring in April for fall of next semester. And so if your student is interested in serving these capacities, we highly encourage them to check out campuslife.wustl.edu so that they can look at the employment opportunities that we offer. Outside of the campus life opportunities, I am sure there are also plenty of employment opportunities. We would highly encourage you to reach out to James McDonald. James is someone who serves from the Student Financial Services. And so we'll put their contact here in the chat.
Thank you. Beth, another question for you. You spoke about our fraternities and sororities and how some of our students have chosen to disaffiliate, a couple of chapters have closed in, but we also still have students who've chosen to stay in their organizations and work towards reform and bettering their organizations as a whole. How is Campus Life supporting the students who are members of fraternities and sororities and have stayed? Like there are current sophomores, juniors, and seniors. How are we supporting them? And then how are we supporting students who are not currently members but are exploring that possibility so that they feel like they can fully participate in that experience, knowing that there have been some student op-eds that have been pretty critical of our fraternity and sorority life system.
Thank you, Catherine. And I would say that the campus life side that we are on is our student side. and our students really making choices to engage in their co-curricular community. I think that's what's so promising about WashU and how we show up is that it's about our students' interest. We look at that safety, we look at that community responsibility, we look at supporting students engaging in that process. So, I ultimately want to share with you all that as we've been engaging, and I've been engaging in this conversation for some quite time with our governing body, with our Sorority Fraternity Life community, with our parents and our alum, I want to say that we want to make sure that we have a safe experience and we want to support them in that process, and that looks a little bit differently. I can tell you that our chapters and those that have continued to stay, we've been meeting with them weekly to engage in what does that look like? What do they want to see different? How do we scale in these new changes about adding in a diversity, equity, and inclusion chair, making changes to the recruitment structure, really creating access and being informed within all of the great different sororities and fraternities that we have. And so we're supporting them in that effort. We're supporting them on the back end in terms of how they can find their voice and empower conversation. The university is so great about being, taking action and being student activators and being activists within their causes. So we are navigating with all different sides to show up to the table and have conversations about how we can engage in that community. With our prospective new members, we met with some of them here, around 240 on Sunday, very excited and eager to participate. What we're doing is also educating our potential new members on the breadth and the depth of what that experience looks like, right? We're thinking about the lifetime commitment, not just the 4-year experience that they will have here in their collegiate career. And so really reprioritizing that. We're also infusing education and trainings associated with thinking through the care and the compassion that our affiliated members can engage with our prospective new members, and also training our advisors to show up and to be able to be partners in this conversation. And in addition, I want to draw your attention to that Campus Connection forum. We've been hosting, or we will be continuing to host, monthly forums to be transparent with the process and the experience. Something new this year that I would encourage folks to start to check out is that we started a Sorority and Fraternity Life accreditation program. Accreditation programs have been in existence for around 20-25 years. And so our accreditation program is guided by the 6 values. And so we're being transparent with how our students and our chapters are showing up. This is the first year. So come December, we'll have some answers on how students are living out their values. So again, on all different perspectives, we're really trying to make sure that students have a voice, have meaning, and building community in the most appropriate way. So those weekly conversations have been most helpful in making sure we're sensitive to the changes of our community and the climate.
Thank you. Danny, what do we think summer is going to look like around WashU, specifically classes?
Yeah, summer school information will be available in the next few weeks. We'll actually share a link in the chat right now to the summer school website, so you can check it out.
Thank you. I lost my place in my script, folks. As Danny, this question is also for you. As the weather gets warmer outside, we're in Missouri, where we like to have all seasons. We're a great state for 4 seasons. So we're only 4 to 6 weeks away from a pretty nice spring. What do we think it'll look like outside, or opportunities we might have for engagement outside when the weather gets better? Like, are we going to go back to having outdoor classes? I saw you say capture the flag on a slide. Like, what do we think we might be able to do when people don't have to be like huddled inside? Because I think it's 12 degrees outside right now.
Yeah, with the new puppy that I have, I actually took him to campus on Saturday to be able to start socializing him with different human beings. And I was actually able to see a lot of students outdoors just walking about, even in the cold. I think they're really craving to be outside and not huddled in their rooms. And so I've been able to already observe that. I think as the weather continues to get warmer, the guidelines that we have, the policy regarding what students can do formally outside is still the same. They will have to register that through WUGO, and there is a maximum of 10 people so far, or is it 20 people? I think it's 10 or 20.
And inside, 25 outside.
Thank you. And so if they're able to get that approved, then they'll be able to do some outdoor activities, and they'll be able to have some fun with their friends. I think even with Capture the Flag, that is offering to all student groups, and we are maintaining within this the guidelines and policies for that, and that's going to be in April as well, hoping that the weather will get warmer. And so I think students are, as I've been walking around campus, I've observed them always having their mask on. They're always walking around with social distancing. And so I'm really encouraged that students are adhering to the policies and the guidelines while also being able to stretch their legs and get some fresh air.
Thank you. Beth, back to sorority and fraternity life. If a student chooses not to, like if they're a first year student now and they choose not to go through the sorority and fraternity life recruitment process as a first year student, are they able to do that later in their academic career?
Yes. I can tell you that very enthusiastic. This is a lifetime commitment, and so we want our students to be informed. And so for some of us, having our second semester of our first year is when we're ready for those expectations to our time and some of the commitment that we have in terms of leading and serving. I went through my process my sophomore year, and so equally it is about fit and time and where we are ready for that conversation. So with my academic advisees, I talk a lot about their course load and how their course load is in tandem with when they go through that process, because we're looking at a lot of time expectations that are connected to this opportunity. And so we want to make sure that that is, that our academics consistently come first. So certainly if it is not this year, you are able to look at it in the fall semester as well as the spring semester, all the way up until you graduate. There are some sororities and fraternities, more specifically in our historically African-American and PhD chapters, that allow for after you graduate to go through their graduate chapter. And so there's a lot of ways that you can be informed, and our office will be hosting some historical sorority and fraternity life information later in the weeks ahead.
Thank you. And Beth, I have a non-campus life question for you, but I think you know the answer. When is information about fall housing going to be available?
Oh, well, I am so excited that you asked me this question. For context, with our sororities and fraternities, 10 of our fraternities also have chapter facilities. So this is a great conversation that I can have. And so for our housing selection, it will be coming out in the next week about the fall semester. Residential Life will actually be emailing students directly later this week, and the First Year Center will include a link in the announcement website in tomorrow's Family Ties e-newsletter. I will say that for those that are interested in being affiliated with a fraternity and interested in a chapter facility space to live in, there'll be some more information about that at a later date, but that is not a requirement of our chapter members. So our new members to live in the chapter facilities, it's at the discretion of the fraternity. So I can talk offline with those family members that want more questions about chapter facilities, but very excited about housing selection, very excited to get this energy as high as it can be. We have a great process. It's probably the best process I've seen at all of the institutions I've worked with. So hopefully that answers your question. Maybe my enthusiasm was a little too high on that one.
Yes, and to be clear, for housing selection will be available for all students, not just those with chapter facilities.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I got so much excitement in my mind. I put them all together. Yes, it is for individual students going through our housing selection within Residential Life.
So we are down to our last question for the evening. So for our families, as a reminder, any questions we weren't able to ask during the webinar, we will email our answers to you. As long as you didn't use the anonymous attendee, then I don't know who you are and I can't email you your answer. But Danny and Beth, thank you so much for all you've shared with us tonight. Danny, my last question is for you. What advice do you have for families as they help their student navigate getting involved this semester? I know you spoke a little bit about this earlier, but if you have like one last nugget of wisdom, what is it for these families?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think I'm gonna have to come back to my own experience in college and the projection of that. I think I'm at a place where I am because someone in my position cared about me and was willing to have a relationship with me. And I think I want to emphasize to you all as parents that relationships really, really matter in college. And I want you to encourage your students to be like, don't be intimidated, don't be afraid to reach out to people like us, because honestly, we really did join this field and this job because we really love our students. And so I would go back to that. I know that I already said it last time, but that I want, if there's anything that you're going to leave here with, I hope that you will take that away with you, is that we care about your students and we really want them to reach out to us, whether they're having a good time or whether they're challenged by something.
And I would also say, in addition to what Danny said about reaching out, we have our GPS advisor program. So again, as we have academic advisors for your students, we also have our co-curricular advisor program. We also have virtual hours from our Campus Life office that you can engage in with the Zoom links, and that is on our Campus Life website. So there's times that are associated with that. A real live person is going to be there, get you to the most appropriate person. And I would, if I can answer that question, which I'm going to really quick, is please work with your students, get them engaged with their WUSAs, with their RAs. They have the most knowledge. And so if our students are saying there's nothing to do, have them talk with their RA, have them talk with their WUSA. Get engaged with WUGO, have that start as one of your favorites and say, well, hi student, let's go through what the event schedule is. Let's find something that is of interest to you, or let's look at the student groups. So those would be my other 3 things of takeaway is utilize our peer-to-peer mentor program. It works, they get engaged, and then additionally with WUGO as an online source.
Well, Beth and Danny, thank you again so much for sharing all this information with us this evening. Families, we hope you learned some valuable information that you can take back to your student to help them feel engaged and involved with the university. So we ask you to stay tuned for our next webinar, a conversation with mental health services through the Habit Health and Wellness Center. It will be occurring the week of March 1st, and you'll be able to register for that webinar at families.wistal.edu. So thank you again for everyone joining us tonight, and have a good evening.